Yeah, so I'm a registered massage therapist by
Okay.
license, but I practice similar to like a manual therapist, stretch therapist. We opened up Revive, which is a wellness company in 2019 of, I believe it was June. Yeah, it was June of 2019,
Okay.
like literally the year before pandemic. And it was a startup with myself and my business partner who was a client of mine,
Okay.
and a childhood friend, Justice. And from there, we went into a venture, and since 2019, it's been a lot of evolution since then, and
Yes.
growth since the pandemic. So yeah, it's been good, it's been great, right? So essentially,
Yes.
what we're all about is, I think I spoke about this with you before, but empowering communities through wellness. It's the lifestyle that I chose from day one, and I
Mhm.
found myself doing that wherever I went. It was mainly in basketball at first, and then I found that it was actually bigger than that. It was always bigger than basketball,
Yes.
and I found it in just wellness as a whole, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's basically where it all started.
Yeah, and I wonder if it is basketball. Do you work with David Tyndale, like, and those guys? Is that
I think I was just talking to Anna. I don't know if you know Anna Vera. I was just talking to Anna
yes,
Vera. Yeah, so she was talking about, yeah, literally yesterday. Like
yes,
I was literally just talking to her yesterday, and she mentioned your name. I'm like, oh, so that's probably how I know you. That's probably how
yes,
I've heard of
bro,
you.
yes.
And I think it was through Instagram. I think it was through Instagram. I think you were following Anna. I think you popped up on her page one time. And then from there, I followed along.
Okay.
Um, I think it was Pilates for when you said, I think it was Pilates for ballers, right? So and then I saw that, I'm like, oh, basketball industry,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
I'm in wellness. I'm like, this is going somewhere, right? So it's good
Yes.
to have
Yeah.
someone in that, right? So, but yeah, that was basically it.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. So, and yeah, Anna used to work with me at a big box gym here in the area.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, she's great thinker, mover, right? Like she really does know her stuff. And I remember a lot of clients she worked with, she was like, she's really strong with them. So,
Hmm.
and the Pilates for Ballers page, I don't really do much activity on that, but I realized I think I wanted to broaden it a little bit more, much like you, right? Like it's bigger
Yep.
than
Yep.
basketball. So
Yeah.
as much as like my son's, big into basketball and I'm really kind of in that world, I know that, Pilates is just a game changer for every athlete and
Hmm.
why it narrowed down so much, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually what got me into your this page, is because I understood that message, because
Mhm.
it's more than just, I found it was more than just the actual service itself of what
Yes.
we do as individuals. It's like what's bigger than that, right? That's the whole like development as a whole as an individual, right? And that's when I started
Yes.
seeing the personal victory, and I was like, oh, so that's what I was actually more gravitating towards, was the
Yes.
personal victory. Not that, I still see the benefits of the Pilates and the basketball, etc. But I feel like that's small scale in comparison to what you can do for an individual as a whole, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, so let's just talk a little bit more about that. So your background is as a massage therapist and you've
Mhm.
really broadened your scope in many ways, right? So,
Yes, yeah.
okay, yeah, so yeah, please talk about that a little more.
So I actually started off as a kin student. That's where it all started off.
Okay.
I didn't know what kind of therapist I was going to be before. Like I just knew I wanted to be a therapist, even since I was like in grade 6, 7. And the only reason is because I had a lot of injuries, and that's literally the reason for why. And
Right.
it's like edge pain after here, then you got knee pain here, and then you hurt your wrist, and you're gonna cast again, and you're like, okay, so. It started off as a passion to be able to help myself, and then help, once I have a family, be able to help them as well, right?
Right.
Because trying to teach them what I wish I knew when I was younger, right?
Totally.
And so that's where it stemmed off from. I went into kin as a result of that, not knowing what I wanted to be. I thought I wanted to be a physio. So
Mhm.
I actually reached out to a mentor, Vinny, and I just hit him up through DM, and then I learned from him as an assistant. That's literally how it all started.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
that's when it was like literally just trigger point therapy, and then it went into manual therapy, and then just looking at the body as a whole, just globally, right, and seeing how
Yes.
things essentially interact together, and as well as in separation, so in segmentation, right? So,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then just putting it all back together to be able to move in an ability to like adapt throughout time, right?
Yeah.
So that's where my basis came from, and then it hit me around third year university where I was like, nothing wrong with school, but the system for me, it wasn't for me. So academic setting wasn't something for myself.
Yeah.
I found myself, I learned a lot more through experiences, and through mentorship. and I made a decision to just jump into massage school on the weekends while I was in kinesiology. And
Okay.
then I became a massage therapist because I thought it's like, what's the fastest way I can get in the industry so I can start helping people?
Yes.
And that was literally where it started. So I became licensed, and prior to that, I was just practicing, here and there on some clients. Um, and it was kind of like solo. You kind of going out there, you're just learning the trade. And
Hmm.
then as I became a massage therapist, uh, I noticed that I didn't really need the license. I'll be honest with you, right? So
Okay.
I really never really needed the license. But at the end of the day, it's like I would never understand that if I never actually went through it. So,
Yes. Right.
so if anyone was to ask me, what I am essentially or what I do is that I just help people heal themselves. That's essentially what I do, right? I do it through
Yeah.
education, through movement, through wellness.
Yes.
And in terms of skills, I practice similar to a stretch therapist and a manual therapist, right? So
Yes.
just put it all together, and it's just I'm helping people holding their hands through the process, and then letting them essentially fly at the end of it, right? Towards their goals, right?
Amazing.
So and then that's where it stemmed from, right? So that's where it essentially started out as. And now we have Revive. So that's
Yeah.
where, yeah. So you can't do
Love
it by
that,
yourself,
man.
man. You can't do it by
No,
yourself, right?
exactly.
So that's
What's your
no one
business
gets.
partner's background? Like, is he like also
Nigerian.
in?
He's Nigerian. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, he's from Nigeria. He was actually born in Nigeria. He came here later in the year. I think it was like 2008 or something along those lines.
Cool.
And we actually met on the basketball court in high school. So we didn't
Okay.
actually like. It was funny because
You're like
we didn't really
rivals
know.
become
We
business
did actually,
partners.
yeah, it was funny because like he would just show up at the court, right? And I knew he lived in the area. I lived in the area, but he went to Glen Forest. I didn't even know that until I started working on him as a client.
Yeah.
During the time when we were in high school, it was just like he'd show up, we just play, and that was it. And
Yeah.
there's just a respect for each other, and that's it. You just go on, you just show up to play, and then I found out through Instagram as I was at my detox, he was opening his shop, his 416 Wheels and Tires, which actually is next door to Revive. That's how we
Okay.
got Revive, right? So,
Yeah.
and he basically came from a medical engineering background. And then he left the program to start a business in tires because he's a hustler. So he literally he figured it out. He
It's
found how
got to
to do it,
grind.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he figured out how to do it. And then from there, we essentially connected because I was like, I hit him up. I'm like, it's dope to see him doing big things now, right? And we connected. I treated him, and he had a whole bunch of injuries because he played soccer as well in
Sure.
the past at a high level. And then from there, he saw, what he actually approached me in the past while I was treating him, and it's like, would you ever do business? Would you ever considering open up your own clinic, right? And
Hmm.
I'm like, you know what, I would, I think, but I want something bigger than that, right?
Yes.
I don't want to just be a clinic. I don't want to just be therapy. I want to be wellness. I want to be able to help people on a bigger scale. So, and he
Yes.
understood that, and that's where like he was seeing me on a regular basis, taking care of his wellness, and then the relationship just grew, and then one thing after another led towards like, oh hey, there's a space open up next door, and then it
Yes.
was like I took the space. He just said it. He's like, I took the space, and I'm chilling in Philippines. I'm like, I'm in
Yeah.
Philippines on an island, and he's like, yo, I'm gonna sign the deal. I sent him my business proposal, and he's
Yes.
like, let's get into it. You know what I mean? And we just jumped on it.
Amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was literally a spur of the moment. It was bound to happen. It was eventually bound to happen in terms of opening up my own space, but he's not a therapist by all means, right? So he's not a therapist by
Right.
all means. And for myself, I needed that because I've been around in the industry and I've learned that just because you're a therapist doesn't mean you know business. And for myself, it's like I wanted to be around somebody else who's been doing business in a different industry, in
Yes.
products or service, whatever it may be. So they understand like it's bigger than just the actual techniques. You're building
Yes.
people, right? You got
Right.
to see that, right? And
Yes.
when you start understanding that, that's the game changer.
I think
And
so.
that's what changed it for us. That's what
Well
changed it for
said.
us. So yeah. So but yeah.
Yeah, so there's a question here. So you see, Ultimate Serenity Bodywork is a massage therapist and Pilates instructor. So
Yes.
she
Correct.
layered in like, massage and stuff, and she does Thai. So she's asking if you do Thai as well.
Yeah. So actually, so everything I've learned, even like fascial stretch to like functional range or all those kind of stuff, Thai, I learned it from people. I never actually took specific courses. Like my guy for Thai is matcha strength and recovery.
Okay.
He's my stretch therapist. Like I go to him on a regular basis
Yes.
because I need my guy to teach me, at the same time, also like elevate me in my own knowledge, right? So
Yes.
because I never want to be stagnant in that aspect, because I feel like if I start, then I'm not going to be their best version for myself for my clients, right? So
Right. Yeah.
he's Matt Challenge. He's the guy that I go to for Thai, and he taught me a whole bunch of techniques through actually experiencing the actual sessions through his own, right? I think he calls it
Yes.
hybrid, but it comes from Thai yoga massage. That's where he
Yes.
actually gets it through. So I integrate some techniques here and there, but I use my own philosophies. But the technique itself, I utilize to leverage and save actually save my hands. That's actually the biggest thing on my body.
Yes. Wise.
Yeah, you're correct.
Short shelf
Wise.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it multiple times, and it's not long at all. You don't last long in this industry if you're just pure, just like all fingers, all hands, all shoulders.
Right.
Your body breaks down over time, right?
It does. It does.
But yeah, so I just
Yeah.
integrate it. Yeah.
Well, there was a time too I was considering becoming RMT, and then I heard so many guys that I was going to and working with that saying like your shelf life is so short as a RMT because your hands, right? So it was like, well,
Yeah.
what are the ways can I help? What are the ways can I do stuff? And I was already in sport conditioning, PT, and I saw that even within the Pilates world that one, there was not enough men, and two, there was definitely no brothers in it. So it was like, okay, I can totally corner the market here to some degree, and then not have to be in that weird space where, some guys don't want to work with you as a massage therapist, and some women are kind of weirded out by working with a guy. And then whereas personal training was almost like the opposite. Like guys wanted to come to you because they want to look like you or they want to be bigger, stronger, and girls wanted to come to you because they just maybe didn't want to work with a female. Like there's different reasons where more people will be comfortable with you in that arena, and there was more people who feel uncomfortable with you in that massage arena, right? So I shifted for many reasons to it. So I like the way that you broadened your scope of practice and thought about it and approached it in different ways, because I couldn't figure that part of it out first,
Oh, it took time. Trust me, it took me time. A lot of time. Yeah, because I think once you start seeing the rest of the people around you start to, like, their physical starts to decline, then you start like, okay, I'm still starting out. Let's start to like consider, okay, what can I start to do to save myself?
Be proactive.
Right? Yeah, and and the other thing is like you like understand you can't do it all by yourself, right? So having a team around you, having a community around you to refer to, that are specialists in what they do, like that's also how you save yourself. Like, cause like why try to do it all by yourself, thinking it's like it's your responsibility to only do it by yourself. It's like, no, your responsibility is to make sure that they get to where they need to get to. Whether it's you, whether you go to Pilates, whether they go to yoga, whether they go to whatever it may be, right? And that's actually what also helped me save myself a lot. Aside from being like a hands-on therapist, right? Like, and stretch, right? So, but yeah.
Just reading a couple of comments here. Once again, Lisa's saying, awesome to hear. I learned from Thai people. It's better than books. It's true, always. And then the second one, cool. It's good to be well-rounded and not just staying in one pre-designed box. Yeah. And something that you said earlier too, Josh, I wanted to circle back to when you simply said like spur of the moment. Like it's weird how in a sense it feels like a spur of the moment, but the reality is it really isn't, right? Because that's been like it's been like brewing. Brewing for years and years, and it's like when it's ready, it just appears and it looks like it's spur of the moment.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I love moments like that, right?
It literally, like, it was funny because the way that it all happened and all went down, it was like a cascading effect. And like it was literally a domino effect. As one thing happened, another thing led to another, another thing led to another. It was like before it was like, why don't you just open your own clinic? I'd be like, I'm not ready yet, right? That's what I would say to myself. Like, I'm not there. I have to learn this. I have to learn this first, right?
Right.
Then it happens again, and it's like, I'm still not ready. Like, I still got to learn this and this and learn this. And then the third time it happens is like, it just hits you, and it's like, it's time. You know what I mean? You can't hold it off any longer, and it's just like you just got to make it work, right? And you just build it. You build it on the way up. Like as you're kind of going through it, right? So and it was a lot of that. It was a lot of learning as you go. And I wouldn't do it any other way, to be honest with you, though. other
I
than
wonder if there really
enjoying
is any other way. Because, it's like, I'm sure for the parents and like those who are married in the audience, like you're never ready to get married and you're never
it.
ready to have kids.
Have a
Like you can
kids. Yep.
prepare as much as you want, but at some point you just have to jump.
Yep. That's what it is. And that's a huge lesson I learned during the last couple of months, to be honest with you. And that's actually a big lesson because I was doing that in business. I wasn't doing it in my own life, personal. And I found
Yes.
that was a huge, um, huge way for me to get to where I need to get to in my personal goals, right?
So
You're never
sorry.
going to be ready. You're never
Right.
ready, man. Right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just at the end of the day, it's just you just gotta jump everywhere you are. Like it doesn't matter where you are, and just take the risk because you don't know where it's going to take you, right?
True.
And whether you think it's bad, at the end of the day, it's just another lesson, right?
It's a
That's all
lesson.
it is, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I had a post about that a few weeks ago. Like my wife is like a total like adventurer and I'm
Mhm.
like the linear thinker and she's kind of pulling me out of that box.
Mhm.
But I've had to kind of change my mindset on those things because, much whether it's business or personal, you can look at it as a moment of fear or a moment for adventure,
Mhm.
right? So, and then
Mhm.
I've started to kind of re-script things as adventure that would have been a fearful thing, first of all, like whether it's opening my studio or like, doing anything on on a personal level too, they have to be adventures. And if it fails epically, then it's still a life lesson
Mhm.
and it's still an adventure along the way, right? So yeah, there's a lot that we can learn from jumping into a business setting and just realizing that we need to be consistent with that through the rest of our life
Mhm.
on different planes.
I agree with you, 100% on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff. Do you know Mike Dabrowski? Are you familiar with him?
100%. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I heard your message earlier. That's why I was laughing. I'm like, oh shoot, you're at High Octane. That's dope, man. I like that.
Yeah.
I think Mikey, we met at an event. It was a accelerator event. It was actually an accelerator event for clinics.
Okay.
And from there, we just kept in contact. He was one of those guys that literally just like he kept in contact. He'd check in, I check in on him. It was like one of
Yeah.
those things. And then he's uh, he's grown a lot. I've grown a lot. Like we've both seen ourselves grow at different stages of our life, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's funny that you actually you actually are all in the same spot. That's dope.
Yeah. He's good, man. I like the fact you mentioned growth, right? I
Yes.
want to kind of hang out on that word growth for a second, because he gave you high praise. Like he was just saying, like this guy is really smart. He knows his stuff, and he's kind of going on about you a little bit. And I'm sure, like I know Mike well to know that if he's giving you that kind of praise, he is probably one of the smartest guys I know in that athletic therapy space.
100%. Yeah.
I refer my people to him. Like everyone I know, it's like talk to Mike, and then when whatever Mike says, come talk to me, and then I'll do what Mike says. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then likewise, right? If I have someone, and then he'll refer with me, and then we kind of connect people.
Yeah.
Um, in your space, in that kind of massage, physio, movement space, growth is definitely one of those aspects of what makes people that good, right?
Yeah.
What are some of those elements, other elements that kind of bring people to that next level in terms of the work that you guys are doing?
I think it's even if you stem it back beyond growth, I think it's just a mindset. I think it's a mindset because every person is different in terms of what they can offer in terms of their personalities and the environments they've grown in.
Yeah,
But
true.
I think it's their mindset. That's like the biggest thing that I've seen, and it changes depending on what stage of life you're in.
Yes.
And you adapt accordingly, or you fall and you got to pick yourself back up, and then that speaks a lot on the individual. But I'd say it's always been like a same thing, the growth mindset. I think it's both hand in hand together.
Hmm.
But without having that, then you just become closed off. I think someone said it earlier. They're saying how you have like a pre-designed box, right?
Box.
And that
Right.
box itself is like if you operate in that box, you have limitations, but the only limitations is yourself, right? And
Yes.
we're talking about fear and adventure. Like I said, that's a perspective. Once you have perspective, you understand like there's really nobody else stopping you except yourself at the end of the day. Like
Yes.
I've seen every decision that I made. Other people, you'll meet other people in your life and like, oh, you're crazy, right? Like, there's
Yeah,
something wrong with you, right? Like,
for
well,
sure.
why would you do this? Why would you do that? Or whatever. It's like,
Yeah, for
at the
sure.
end of the day, it's just like you have to have that kind of mindset to be okay with failure. That's the other thing. Like it's like there are certain things in a mindset you have to have, and without that, I can't see. I won't say success because you can define it differently for every individual, but I wouldn't say I would say like happiness, right?
Yes.
I think that's the number one thing. So growth mindset, being able to understand like it's okay to fail, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a part of life. Like
Sure.
if you're scared of fail, if you're scared of failure, you're just living in fear. You're never gonna grow. It just
Right.
never happens. So all of it's all intertwined, right? So
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people, they try to find what is like, oh, if I don't have this, then I can't succeed. If I don't have this, I won't be happy. It's like,
Yes.
I mean, like it depends, like how you were brought up to that day, right? Like in terms of your life, right? Like, your environment have changed you. The people surrounding you might have changed you.
Yes.
The way that you took a challenge, whether it was successful or failure, that could change you, right? So,
Yes.
but yeah, so those are like key things I would say, right, in an individual, because you
Yeah.
can have like the worst performer on a team, but if they have the right mindset, you can get them back up,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter what it is. You can have the best therapist in the room, but they don't have the right mindset. It's like it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, like they're not going to be they're not going to be happy at the end of the day, right? In terms
Yes.
of what they're chasing, right?
True.
So yeah, yeah. So I'd say that's what I focus on. I'd say growth and mindset and
Growth and
perspective,
mindset. Yeah. Yeah.
perspective, right? So
One of the pieces that has come up in these conversations with a lot of Pilates people has been curiosity.
hmm
And what I mean by that is, if I have a client in front of me, a person I'm working with, is one, having enough of a relationship with the person that I can be
hmm
like, what would happen if we did this? I'm just going to explore this. This happens when you
hmm
turn your foot like this when we do this exercise. Having curiosity and then trying to live out some of those things in terms of the way we practice. I think that that's another piece too, because that curiosity leads us to different solutions and different understandings of people and different tools in our toolbox ultimately.
hmm Yeah, I think the curiosity piece is like it's huge, because in if you don't have that within your mindset, I think what happens is that you become stagnant. Like there's no opportunity for growth,
There's no opportunity
because
for growth. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're okay with like, I think so that's like the bane of society. I think it's like being content, being content with just being okay. And there's nothing wrong
Yes.
with that. There's nothing wrong
Well,
with that.
there
But I
kind
think
of
like,
is, but
yeah, there's nothing wrong, because some
yeah.
people's lives are different, right? Like I
Yeah.
understand that, right? I
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
it, and I try to understand it from everyone's point of view. But I think like that's like the bane of society, is like that you cannot have, if you do not have curiosity, then you'll never see change, right? And you'll never know what
Yes.
kind of change that is, whether it's good or bad. But you're never going to be able to experience change, right?
Yes.
So I think once you can see that, being wanting to learn, like the curiosity to learn, the curiosity to explore, the curiosity to to meet different people.
Mhm.
I think that itself can spark change right away,
Yes.
and that's massive, because you don't know where that takes you, right?
Right.
And be okay with
Exactly.
that, and be okay with whatever those fruits deliver, right? So, yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, man, I think it's like, the more I talk to you, the more I'm appreciating the steps that you've taken in terms of opening the space and your education path. And like I said, me kind of being more of a safe, like Overthinkers Anonymous type person, like it's pretty easy to be like, okay, well, if I just get one more certificate, if I just get one more degree, if I just get 10 more years under my belt,
hmm
if I just get, then I will take this step.
hmm
Whereas you just kind of took that step,
Just
right?
take it.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's literally like walking. It's literally just walking. Like you just got to take the step. Like if the minute
yeah,
you stop and stand, it's like you just start overthinking. You start walking
right,
backwards. It's like you start finding yourself in the same position you were before. It's like, well, did anything really change, right? So if you
right.
walk forward, it's like anything can happen.
Yeah,
Good, bad,
yeah,
doesn't matter, man, right? So just
sure.
you just gotta. I say this all the time. I had a post on this before, and a lot of people who know me on a personal level, they understand it. It's like I just jump for shit. Like I literally, like, you get me on a cliff, I will jump. Why?
Yeah,
Because it's like you just gotta live life. Why? You don't know when you're gonna die, right? It
yeah,
happens every day. So like you just gotta make sure whenever the day is gonna come, like you've experienced and enjoyed every part of life that you've had, right? So why
yes,
wait to make a decision when like you don't know what if tomorrow you're going to be there, right? So you
yeah,
could think
yeah,
about that. You can think about that when you're gone, right? Like it's like that's when you can start thinking about it, right? Like
right.
just go and do it. You know what I mean? Just do it,
Yep,
right? So
yeah.
right,
What's like that saying, like all men die, but few men ever really live?
yep, 100%, yep.
Yeah,
That's I feel like a lot of people are more on the scale of they never
never
really
really
live.
living.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
never really live in. I don't think they'll ever experience living until they take those kind of steps, right?
right.
And And some people go through it, some people don't. Some people, and once you do, I feel like it's addiction. Like you get an addiction to it,
Yeah, for sure.
right? So
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I mean, it's an addiction, but it comes back to having like this record or like these checkpoints or just having this list of things that you can go back and be like, it becomes addictive because last time you did it, you were scared and you succeeded. And the time before that, you did it and you were scared and it didn't really go well, but then you did it again after and then it came through. Like, so you get this whole like line of things that you're like, okay, I can't find the word, but basically in your back of your mind, you have this list of things that like every time I did jump when I didn't really want to jump, it turned out okay.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm I agree with that.
Braveheart, yes. It was Braveheart
Is
that
it?
said that all men die, few men ever really live.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, true. But now we're talking about these adventures, and even as an entrepreneur, like I say all the time, like an entrepreneur is a person who jumps out of the plane and then builds their parachute on the way down,
hmm hmm
right? So to some degree, we're doing that. And I always ask this like real talk, like what have been some of your challenges? Like you went from being, getting a cert, doing your thing, and then all of a sudden you open a space and then lockdown happens and then you
hmm
have overhead.
Yeah.
Like what have been some of like the real time, like this is not sexy, these are my challenges that I've gone through and come through
hmm
type stuff.
There's been a lot of challenges. Good, like it have been great challenges. I'll be honest with you. Like it was myself and my partner had to go. Anybody that owns a business and even who doesn't own a business, they went through a lot of shit during COVID. But what I could say, like even pre-COVID, like we went through a lot of challenges because as you go through it, you're like you want to test the model before the model's even created fully. Like we
Yeah.
have a concept of like the business, and it's like, but
Yes.
is that what we really want to do? And I think there's an appreciation for that as well because you can actually start to like build it as you go, like we were just saying. And as you
Yes.
build it as you go, you start to perfect it based off of what the not just the industry, but what the people want,
Like the real
right?
time feedback, yeah. The real time
Exactly,
data.
right?
Yeah.
So and that's where you see like and that's I think that's where the mastery starts happening, where like
Yes.
the challenges we had at the beginning was like you start out the clinic and you're like okay we went really brand heavy, so we went really brand heavy at the beginning of the clinic.
Okay.
And we tried to dissociate ourselves as being a clinic at the beginning, but then you start learning it's like you know what you actually have to in order for you to own a space you have to prove the model first. So for
Yes.
ourselves we took steps ahead because of our ambition, right, and our
Mm.
passion towards what we were trying to do with our vision, right.
Yes.
And um and by doing that we saw that in the first year it was like we found ourselves helping a lot of people before we could help ourselves. That was one thing of
Right.
people like people helping people grow. And I don't regret one bit of it because that actually helped us to where we are today.
Hmm.
And then in terms of that, it's like, you'd be running the clinic and you'd be like, some days you'd be like, why is it not busy? Right. And then you start,
Yes.
and I start going through, it's like, okay, I'm busy as hell, but what's going on? Like, why is everybody else not busy? So you start
Yes.
questioning, it's like, I'm like, okay, so what's going on with me? Right. Cause there's
Yes.
gotta be something wrong with me now. Cause I'm not doing something right to help these guys grow.
To
So
help
then
everyone else grow. Yes. Yeah.
exactly, right? Because and then I had like thoughts of like maybe I should have built a team before I started the clinic rather than trying to build a team as I was building the clinic. And
Hmm.
you start like going through those thoughts in your head, and
Yeah.
then you start thinking about it, I was like, you know what? Like I feel like if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have experienced the conflicts and trying to figure out the solutions
Yes. Yeah.
throughout that movement, right?
Right. Right.
Because it prepped us for post pandemic. Like during pandemic, it was a whole different beast. We went through a
Yes.
whole like, some like, we had to sit down and be like, like some people are here for revive and some people aren't here for revive. We got to make our decisions now. Why?
Yes.
Because it's like I'm going to invest into these people, and when I start investing into these people, myself, my partner, Justice, and then our marketing lead, um, we all sat down. And it's like we need to grow them, right?
Hmm.
Because we came into this to help people, right? To help grow people to
Yes.
their full potential, regardless if they're a client on the table or a person as a part of our team,
Our team.
or even a
Yeah.
person in our community, right?
Right. Right.
And we were focusing so much on the clients on the table and the people in our community, and the people in our team weren't there yet. They didn't have this yet,
Interesting. Yes.
right? They
Right.
might have had this, but that doesn't matter because even when I hired, I'm like, I don't care if you have skills because we can teach skills, but you
Right.
need this, right? So how
Yes.
can we start to mold them to becoming their best version of themselves? So
Yes.
that was literally like the biggest shift during pandemic was we actually did in the last 6 months, was investing into ourselves to be able to grow and develop the team to their potential, right? And
Amazing.
helping them set targets that also align with the business, right? So it's
Yes.
not just like, oh, we're just you know what I mean? It's not like we're just growing them as an individual, but we're
Hmm.
also growing them within the business so that they
Yes.
can grow and grow with as we grow. Because that's what we
Right.
want to do, right? You want to be able to see everybody with you at the
Yes.
top, right? So
Hmm.
so that was one challenge, a big challenge, and we're still working on it. We're
I
still
was gonna
working
say
on it.
that's gonna
Yeah,
be a continuing
it doesn't
challenge in
stop.
a good
Yeah.
way, right? Right. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like I think once you identify that, it's changed a lot of the way, even how we hire, right? Like
Of
we're very
course.
like particular now with how we hire because we look at people that align, right? And when they align, like can invest into them, right? And when we invest in
Yes.
them, are they moldable, right? Like do they
Right.
can they accept change, right? Are they cool? Are they okay with feedback? Do they
Yes.
understand the importance beyond like just what I'm saying, right? Like if I'm telling them something, like
Yes.
can they actually like take that in?
Yes.
That was like growth and development. That's the biggest segment,
Yes.
which led us to obviously learning to hire correctly, which is
Yes.
a huge thing that I feel like a lot of people like think it's like, oh, I know a guy, I can hire this guy because I know a guy,
Yeah.
right? It's like it doesn't work
That's
that
when
way.
you're lost.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't work that way at all, right? So it's
Yeah.
like it doesn't sit well in the long term. It might work for a couple of weeks, to a month, or maybe 3 months at max, and you'll
Hmm.
start to decline,
Yes.
in terms of their performance as an individual, not just on the team.
Right.
So that was a big challenge during COVID, and we're still going through it to this day, and we're going to continue to grow it every year, every month, every day,
Sure.
because that's the model that we want to perfect. How can
Yeah.
we grow people? That's it. To keep it simple, right?
Amazing.
So,
Yeah.
um, the other one was the brand one. That was the. I
Well,
came from a
it's
big yeah. I came from a
yeah.
big background of a big company that was brand heavy,
Yes.
right? And that
And
stuck
you
with
want,
us.
yes, you almost want to compete, but not really compete, but like have
Yeah,
a same. So was there anything that you thought like right out the gate, like, yeah, this is a great idea, and then once you hit the ground, you're like, oh,
yeah, it wasn't a good idea. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, because
yeah,
like there's small things we did. It was like, even like the display outside the storefront, like the signage is
yes,
like putting things out that the industry in Canada wasn't even ready for, like putting down a
yes,
recovery lounge, right? And
yes,
it's like we're always 10 years behind from the States, like California, right?
right,
And
yeah,
for us to even attempt to do that, we're not ready for that. A wellness optimized co-work space is like we're ahead of the game. I think it
yes,
obviously like that was in the business model, but I'd say um, it
not
didn't really
yet,
take fruition. Yeah, it wasn't supposed to take fruition until 5 to 10 years after. I think pandemic
yes,
actually um, fast tracked everything, accelerated everything.
yes.
So that was
Remind me
like
to come back to Recovery Lounge. Okay, I just wrote that down.
yeah,
So I have
yeah,
something to say
yeah.
for that. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. So recovery lounge, yeah. So there was that, the storefront signage using verbiage that was like manual therapy. It's like no one understands what the hell that means. It's like yeah, literally. I had a call yesterday. I'm like, we gotta start using the words like physiotherapy, chiropractic, and then
Yeah,
etc.
common language. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So they come in here. It's like physio can help me for this, and then we educate them on the difference, right? We show them the
Yes,
value
right.
up front, right? Versus it being
Yes,
like, because they'll come in with their own experiences. I experienced a physio before, they did this for me, or I experienced a massage before, they did this for me, and it didn't work, blah, blah, blah. And
yes,
then you have to go in there, you have to educate. Just like how it is for like, if you were to do for Pilates, like this is not about how I'm different, but it's just how I view the body, and it may help you or may not help you, right?
yes.
And that's how that's the approach, right? Um,
Mhm.
the brand was the funniest. It was like we went so heavy in at the
Yeah,
beginning,
yeah.
and it was beautiful. Like it was orchestrated so well. And I think without doing that, actually, we wouldn't have the community relations that we have to this day as a result
Yeah,
of
for
that,
sure.
right?
You just probably didn't have
But
the
yeah,
uptake that you thought.
exactly. So we didn't have the lead. So we didn't have the lead. So yeah, so I was saying you had one but not the other, right? So you had
Yes.
you had the brand, and then we are like, okay, so how much brand versus lead, right?
Hmm.
So marketing,
Hmm.
right? And it was like the marketing was so. It wasn't there. It wasn't like
Yeah.
it wasn't where it needed to be. And then it was purely focused on my ability to bring leads in, which is
Yes.
community outreach, which is I have no
Yes.
problem with doing that, but eventually I'll burn out. Eventually I'll run out of leads. Eventually, like
Yes.
there's a cap there,
Yes.
and those takes
Interesting.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes time for it to come together. Like as an individual, it's easy for you to do word of mouth because you have time to your
Yes.
benefit. When you don't have the time, right? And
Right.
you need to work with speed where it's like, oh, I have to feed 8 people, right, on the team,
Right. Yes.
right? It's like, okay, well then you need to start considering like, okay, so that may not work. So
Right.
I
How
think,
scalable
yeah,
is X,
it's
Y, or
yeah,
Z? Yeah.
yeah. Like if it was a smaller operation, I believe it would have worked like 10 years. It's like a regular timeline, 5 to 10 years. And you know, you can definitely grow it, no problem. Organic leads, all word of mouth
Yes.
referrals. But we don't have that on our as our advantage. It's a disadvantage for us because of speed, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's what we actually cleaned up during. We had some big moves that we made last year, November, December, where we actually, you know, we started setting up our SEOs, we started setting
Okay.
up our digital marketing, our
Yes.
lead generation. We started testing out different lead generation campaigns, different
Yes.
companies, and it's like we had to find the system, both
Right. System.
community, both lead gen,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And organic SEOs that takes months for it to actually show its effect, right?
Yes.
And it was a trial and error as well. Like you have to test what's best because sometimes the quality isn't there, and you're like,
Mm.
this is why I didn't want to do digital marketing in the first place. Like you start going through your head, it's like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then
But you've also
you're like,
given it like 2 weeks, and you're like ready to
yeah,
give it up, right?
yeah, yeah. You're like,
Yeah.
not working, it's not working, it's not working. It's like, okay, let's give it another week. Okay, let's give it another 2 months, and then you start saying,
Yes.
okay, it's not the right company. Let's try this company now, right?
Right.
And then you start building patience towards that, which is one thing that I got to work on a
Patience.
lot. Yeah, it's patience. So,
I just
yeah.
want just to jump on that, like for the Pilates people who are out there, like there's always this dialogue between those who are just like warm fuzzy, I want to help people, and those who need some business acumen to be able to do this and scale up their idea as big as they want it to be, right? So that's why I appreciate you in this space talking, because like you have this one skill set, but then you're learning the business side, and then you have people come alongside you, and you don't have to do everything, but you're still going to learn all the different moving parts of it. I was going to circle back to the
The recovery lounge, yeah.
recovery lounge.
Recovery lounge.
So
Yes, yeah.
I don't know if you caught this yesterday, but yesterday, the lady that was on, Jillian Henson, she's like an OG Pilates person, like learned in '81, like from people who were taught by Joseph Pilates. Like she's a big dog,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
and she was talking about this lady named Corolla Trier, who was taught by Joseph Pilates, and she had an upscale studio. And I talked about this at the beginning. One of the things that she had in her space, which no one was doing at the time, and still not that many people do, is she made it mandatory for people to sit down in these chaise lounge chairs in this area for 10 minutes at the end of their session.
yeah.
So that was part of the time. So when you leave, you don't just walk out the door, go downstairs and onto a busy New York street. Like you leave the studio, you sit down in these lounges, just stop for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and that was the 1960s, right? So that concept was so new and so different, but her mindset was, one, don't just jump into your real world, take a few minutes to just decompress from the workout. And then also she had like books on the wall and her testimonials and stuff like that. Inevitably people would leave with a book in hand, they buy some product or something, right? So it was another opportunity to buy another product after they paid for a service. But the recovery lounge concept is something that was there in the 1960s that you're trying to institute now that still doesn't get that uptake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting how that was something that was done there. And then she kind of went off on a tangent to say that she was a woman entrepreneur in the 1960s. I don't know how many women were running businesses or running studios in the 1960s doing it, but that was her idea. That was her vision of how this movement thing should go, this Pilates studio should have. And she did it, and it was well received, and she was able to charge more. She had ancillary sales. She had people who recovered, and maybe communities built there, right? If you have 5 people who sit down like, oh, that class was so brutal. Yeah, I know. And then you know what I mean? And then you have that time and decompress, and you build relationship with people, and then people will actually stay around longer as part of that community long after their money runs out, or long after their connection with that one person runs out. They're like, you know what? I'm not vibing with Josh anymore, but Alan still works here. I'm gonna try Alan. So they stay part of your system because they have that connection that may have happened in the recovery lounge.
Yep.
It's like that's it. And that was in the 1960s.
That's pretty cool. I never heard of that, and I'll say that that's 100% true. 10 out of 10. That's how Revive came to place. That's actually that was the actual concept of it. We started off in a small studio, in a Pilates studio, actually. We started off in a Pilates studio. So It
Yes.
was before it was called Recover. I was
Okay.
working with Sheena, with that stretch girl, in Port Credit,
Yes.
and we were collaborating in a space about 400 or about like 500, 400 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
and two massage open concept tables,
Yep.
right? Cut off a curtain from the Pilates studio, and then in the other corner, there's one corner. It was like a melting pot. It was like you had like these two little small, like these two little stool chairs with an ottoman right there,
Yes.
and then we had the makeshift recovery lounge, right? And that
Yes.
was
Yes.
like your Norma Tax, your recovery booths, right, for circulation.
Yes.
And what happened in that room was magic. That's literally where the concept came
That's
from. I
where
was
the
talking
magic
about it.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, the name actually, it was originally what the concept was. It was recovery with a vibe, right? And that's
Yes.
where revive came into place.
Yes.
Because in that setting, you have two people sitting laying on the table getting stretched out, and then you have two other people sitting on the lounge, one reading a book while one's basically just like meditating or napping, right?
Yes. Yes.
And what happens?
Yep. I'm back.
Yeah. So what happened after that is like then you had a lawyer on one side, you had a student on one side, you had a mom on the other side, and you had
Yes.
some
Some
ex
professional.
ex
Yeah.
professional like NFL player, right? Let's say they
Yes.
had
Yes.
all four in the room, and
Yes.
then they just vibe.
Right.
It was like you got all walks of life,
Yes.
literally just interacting and engaging and creating
Right.
experiences to themselves,
And they
that's
wouldn't have
where it
crossed
came.
paths anywhere
No,
else.
no, it wouldn't, and that's because and it's crazy. It's like you see it, and you know what actually I seen it a lot in. It's like the locker room. You know, the locker
Yes.
room when you're in any sport, doesn't matter sport you are.
Right.
You can
Yeah.
literally like know nobody in the first day, and then the
Yes.
experience you come after the game, you sit down in the locker room, you're all getting changed. It's like that right there is
Yes.
it's like you build a bond, and
Yes.
although that bond right there may not be as as in depth, it's
Intimate.
something. Yeah, you start to nurture a relationship that you never knew you had, right?
Yes.
And then that's where our recovery lounge, the concept of it actually came. It's not just to like you saw one side, you have one to unplug, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was like the idea. It's like one, we need to learn to unplug, right?
Yes.
On whatever we find is our basis of unplugging, right?
Yes.
And then the other aspect was like to socialize.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're becoming less and less human. Like we aren't interacting with individuals. We're spending more
Right.
time on our phones, right?
Yes.
We're locked up on an iPad. We're on our laptops working all day. And I think it's becoming true and true. And I think the pandemic really taught us that even further.
Yes.
I think it doubled down on that, right?
Yes.
So that's where that itself opens up an experience to not just like to stay in the system, but particularly to grow the ecosystem. It just nurtures that
Yes.
ecosystem within the wellness community, where it now becomes, like we said earlier, it's like it becomes its own community in itself,
Mm-hmm.
where you look forward to coming there not just for the therapy, right? You look forward to coming there not just for the Pilates. You look forward to engage with people, just like when people socialize in a gym, right?
Yes.
Like you look forward
Right.
to see that guy that you used to talk about how's life, how's the kids doing, right?
Yes.
And what'd you go out to eat that day or whatever? You start talking about random stuff and you start unloading, right? You start unloading.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what I find is that's where the recovery lounge is. That's the magic in the recovery lounge, and
Yes.
it hasn't hit home yet in our industry. I think it started blowing up more recently as a result of the pandemic,
Yes.
because people are starting to understand how
And they're
much
so starved for interaction.
there it is, right? They're
Yeah,
starting to
yeah.
understand that. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
like how can I, aside from going outside and partying, right? Like nothing
Right.
wrong with that, but it's like for to each his own, right? So,
Yeah.
but is there another way I can do it where I can still socialize, right?
Thanks, Joel.
In an environment that I'm, still healthy, well,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Like, can I still do it in that manner and be around like-minded individuals, or even like
Yes.
be, attracted to different types of energies of other individuals,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You're cut from the same cloth as Andrew, the guy who runs the studio, and Mike and myself, in the sense that, all we're doing ultimately, and I can kind of close on this piece, is that all we're doing is building community, and we happen to have a skill set
Mm-hmm.
that we're using, and we're giving that talent and that skill set expression, but all we're trying to do is really build community,
Yeah.
right? To make it a healthy community, a vibrant community, adventurous, fearless,
Yes. Yep.
growth mindset community, and we're doing that with our hands, with our mind, with our skill set. So
yeah.
solid, man.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in Saga too. Represent.
Yeah, all Saga. We're all Saga. That's why I love it. That's the other part. It was funny because I was like, that's the first place, and that's always gonna be the first place that I'm gonna start my first business. It's gonna be a Saga.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's home. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I like to see other people grow in Saga, right? Like that's a big
Right.
thing. Not
Yes.
to say anything else from other
No,
videos,
no,
but
no, I
no,
feel you. I and I, I
yeah,
I catch myself here. I mean, I'm talking with people from all over the world, and I still
yeah.
say Mississauga, Ontario, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to use a reference, say it's just outside of Toronto, but I don't open with Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like I want to put Mississauga on the
Saga
map.
first. Yeah, that's
Yep,
that's that's always on top of mind. It's I feel like it's done so much for me. You know what I mean?
yep,
Like
yep.
Mississauga has been a huge part of my growth, and you just want to get back. That's literally it.
Yes. Yeah.
Give back to the community for the next generation. That's a
Right.
legacy you want to leave behind, right? Um,
Legacy. Yeah.
right. So yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's like a minute over before you touch the word legacy, but I'm sure it's not that's not the last conversation we're gonna have.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely be on this again. Don't worry.
Yeah,
I
man.
love this.
You're
Love this.
close by too, so I'll make sure I drop in some time. Or if you want to get a
Yes, yes.
Pilates session in, man, got all this stuff behind me here. So,
I am always down. I am always down. So
all
you
right,
let me know whenever you're free, and I will get it down. Right. So I'm with it.
done.
All right.
Definitely.
So.
All right, and to everyone who joined us today, thank you so much, Joel. Thanks for your comments. Ultimate Serenity Bodywork. Follow her. She's on the show before too. I'll send you the link for her conversation as well.
Thank
Super,
you. Yeah.
super smart. Pilates slash everything person.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people out there. So thank you all. Thanks to all your peeps who came and cheer you on as well. Josh, you got a call to come to Scarborough right there.
Yeah. Look, they're trying to get us out there, bro.
Mm-hmm. We'll
It's all good.
expand. Yeah.
I know.
All right,
We'll
cool.
get there. We'll get there. Thank you,
Yes.
brother.
All right,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Take care. Thanks again for your time.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Take
Thank you,
care.
everybody.
Thank you, guys.